You ready? Okay.
You prepared something?
I want to talk today about Zman Krias, but not like the nitty-gritty technical Zman Krias, an interesting need in relating to Zman Krias. Now, I just want to start like this. The Divrei Chaim, the Heilige Tzanzer Rav, he's not unique in this regard. There's many Rebbes who are great at the Chachamim. But he's unique in a certain like stature. The Divrei Chaim is like on the stature with like the Chassam Sofer, the Neiv Yehuda. If you see a machlekes, the Divrei Chaim and the Neiv Yehuda, your eyebrows don't raise. Like, it's machlekes amongst the daily apaisim. The Divrei Chaim has like the status of the daily apaisim. No, but not by much. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
They're both early.
No. The Divrei Chaim is early 1800s, early 1700s, mid 1700s. Be it as it may, my point is just that his stature is that of like from the Gedolei HaPoskim. He's not just a Chassidish Rebbe who said Psakim from the Gedolei HaPoskim. Now, the Divrei Chaim also was a Gracie Rebbe who spawned a tremendous amount of Chassidism. The Divrei Chaim was married 4 times. He had 15 children in his marriages. He had 8 children from the first marriage, no children from the second marriage. The rest of them from the third. And the 4th one he married, there was like a 40 or 50 year age gap between him and his wife.
What?
Yeah, fascinating. No, not talking about that. No. He had 15 children. Some of the Divrei Chaim's children were killed in the Holocaust. That means the length. The Divrei Chaim himself was born in like 1797.
Oh, wow.
1797. Some of his children, 2 of his sons, were killed in the Holocaust. His 2 youngest sons, of Shaila Checheva and the Chikasa. Not Chikasa, I'm sorry. The Checheva and the, I forgot which 2. Ratzfert and Chechev, 2 of his children.
How old were they?
They were very old, but they were his youngest children from like his 3rd marriage. It's a very, very big span. The Divrei Chaim had a great granddaughter who was still alive till like 2015. Like the span of his he had 15 children. He was also a little bit non-dynastic. No one really took over as Tzanzer Rav after the Divrei Chaim was nifter. The Divrei Chaim had his son was the Shineva who became a big Rebbe. He had the Garlitz. He had over generations it was Chachve and Ratzfert and Chechoiv, and there's a million branches of the towns. Eventually, Babiv is one of the branches. That's a pretty early branch. Shlomo Babiv was a grandson, the first of Shlomo Babiv, not the one we know. The original Shlomo Babiv was a grandson of the Divrei Chaim. Kloisenberg is the Divrei Chaim's family, meaning he left over a very, very big net of Rebbes and Chassidim, whatever. But Mitzad Sheni, he also left over his magnum opus, the Divrei Chaim, 3 volumes of Tshuvas Farm, on Da'od Chag Shulchan Aruch, where he has Psakim in Cheshem Mishpat, in Ebenezer, in Shveres Tesugis and Shas. The Divrei Chaim has major Psakim. As a matter of fact, when it comes to building mikvahs, the Divrei Chaim's Chumrah is a very prominent Chumrah still today. How to build a mikvah based on Divrei Chaim's, innovations. He had a few famous like Shitas, Chumras, Matzah, Tzitzis machines. He had a few famous Chumras that he had. Additionally, something was interesting for Chassidish Rebbe to hold. He held that being a Rebbe does not go be Yerusha. A Rebbe, taking over a Rebbe could be Talmidim, it doesn't have to be children. In Taka, the Divrei Chaim's children themselves, it wasn't like sons was the Rebistava. The Rebistava was Divrei Chaim's kinder. And they all were Rabbanim in different villages throughout the area where he lived. In Galicia, there was a lot of Tzanzer Chassidim. They fought with the original Chassidim. Where? In Eretz? Oh yeah? I never was, but yeah. The Divrei Chaim's an interesting man. Now, what's interesting, the reason why I'm saying this, why I'm framing this, is that the Divrei Chaim was like a synthesis of a real Chassidish Rebbe. Yitaka was a real Chassidish Rebbe and a real Pesach. Like his fealty to halacha was extreme. The Divrei Chaim, when he felt something violated halacha, was at all costs. Meaning he was a tremendous Pesach and a tremendous Rebbe. Now that's why this Kol Koreh that he put out is fascinating to me. I want to read you the Kol Koreh that he put out a little bit, and then we'll discuss the shayla that it's based on. The Divrei Chaim put out a Kol Koreh. I don't know the exact year. Tafresh Lamed Beis. 1872. 1872 is when this Kol Koreh came out. The Divrei Chaim was already an older Rebbe, like one of the senior Admirim of his generation. It goes as follows. Hine, mitzvahs Krias Shema, hiya oila mikama ma'ilus al yesar mitzvahs. It supersedes and it's better and bigger than many other mitzvahs. She tedira pamayim b'chol yom. It's a mitzvah we do twice every single day. Ular Ramban, b'shach v'chav k'mechem beis mitzvahs says. According to Ramban, it's 2 mitzvahs deraisa, 2 independent mitzvahs deraisa. Do it by day and by night. Va'oid, sh'roiv ha-mitzvahs ein lam shir kavua b'Torah. K'may milah v'lulav v'demem zmanam kol yom. Any mitzvah you need to do during a day, you can do it the whole day. Right, Milah Yom HaShmini, do it the whole day. Lulav, the whole day. Kriya Shema zman kavu min atayr zman shchiv zman kima. It has a set time at waking up time and going to sleep time. So the zman Kriya Shema is deraisa also. The ikr, the best way to do it is before Netzachama. Kivasikin. You can't do it later than a quarter of the day. Depending winter, summer, whatever the day is long, short, it doesn't matter. Man Kriya doesn't take a break. Nimtza, he says. Here's the problem that he wants to address. Nimtza, bekayetz, kishamud hashachar, hu halb tzvai, v'tzeisa kichav halb tzein, hayoim ar chafchayis, so kol is man Kriya halb zibin. By 6:30 a.m. is man Kriya Shema already. Now, to figure out the zmanim that the Rebbe is working with is very hard. And there's an article in the Eitz Chaim, the Bab Bekovitz, like a whole arichas article to figure out which exact zmanim the Rebbe is using. That's the part we're not going to talk about at all. Suffice to say, Halb Tzvai is 1:30 a.m. Yeah, you have to figure out exactly what he means. And Halb Zibin is 6:30 a.m. He's saying the Zman Kriya Shema is over at 6:30 a.m. Our calendar, the way we have it today, the Zman Kriya Shema is never that early. Even in the earliest, even if you look at a calendar, our Zmanim that we work with today, if you take it to Tzanzer in 1872, whatever this is written,
You push it in Tzanzer and you push it back.
Tzanzer 1872, you're still not going to have this Zman. So it needs some calisthenics to figure out which Zman the Rebbe is using. But no way, no. Whatever. Putting that aside, that's not relevant to us. Yeah, putting that aside, this is the problem that he's addressing: is that people are missing Zman Kriya Shema. Now, of course, it would be foolish to say this is uniquely a Chassidish problem, but it was primarily a Chassidish problem because the Litvaks were uptight. They were up early. They got up. They davened, and they made the Zmanim. That's it. The day started. But the Chassidim, they became an Indian of Hachunas, right? Now, in every tzibur, it meant different things. Some people in Ger Lamashal cuts. Hachunas meant how does he go to davening without learning for a few hours? You have to learn that posha. Other places it meant going to the mikveh. Other places it means saying tehillim. Other places it means going to the bathroom a bunch of times. Whatever it means in different. It's not a joke.
No.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Whatever it means in the milieu of the day. But Chassidim, it ended up being that davening didn't really start until a late time. Now in the summer, putting aside the Rebbe Chaim's actual zmanim, whatever the zmanim were, it's very easy to miss Man Kriya Shema if you're davening late. If you get up at 6 a.m., you spend 3 hours preparing, then you start davening a Psukei Zimra, with his slahavas, and you say karbanas, and you do the whole spiel, you're going to miss Man Kriya Shema. So the Rebbe Chaim was faced with like this conundrum. What do you do? Chassidish Haggis of davening, late with preparation, he's not belittling that. That's very wichtig. L'maisa, it creates a big Man Kriya Shema conundrum. So he says as follows. He says, "B'deris halalu in our dar." And this is a very nice take on it. Sha'adar chalosh. Roiv Yisrael einam yichayim l'spal kol kach b'ashkama. Ilm's not holding with davening bashkam anymore. Vasikim minyan is not for everybody. Al-Kaini says, "Kasvar achreinim sheyakum kaidim atfilim yad b'kumay." Right when you get out of bed, you should say, "Kol gimel aparshi Shema v'hayim shmaya parsha tzitzis ad ani Hashem lekechem." You should read the whole Kriya Shema right when you get out of bed. V'yichaven lasses b'Kriya zu mitzvahs Kriya Shema. Have in mind to be yotze mitzvahs Kriya Shema when you read Kriya Shema right when you get it. You wash nagavas, you say brachas, read Kriya Shema. Then you do your hachanas, whatever is involved, and you get to davening eventually. He says, that was the meaning of all the tzaddik adaris and Talmidei Chachamim. Ayim Belavosh, he says, put that aside for a second. Now, what he doesn't bring in here, and this is brought down in other svarim, the Chassidus brings down, other people bring it down, is there's a zayar in Parshas Balak, I think actually, that says that when a person goes to sleep, his body becomes subsumed in tumah, which we know, we wash nagavasa, right, ruach, and etc. And the zayar is meisif that the tumah does not leave his ramach ivarim shesagidim until he reads Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is like the cleanser that opens you up. So some Hasidic Svarim said, not only do you need to read Kriya Shema before you start davening because you're going to miss Kriya Shema, you have to read Kriya Shema before because you have to first read Kriya Shema. Like you have to first, yeah, exactly. Like hachunas v'ada hachunas, exactly. You have to read. Yeah, exactly. It's a cleanser. It's a cleanser. It's a cleanse. Read it right. Yeah, it's a cleanse, meaning you have to do it. And because of this, some Chassidim were very makbid to read Kriya Shema first. Now here's the problem. This is the problem. This is why does there need to be a kolkari about this? Here's the problem. This is Gemara in Brachas, Tafidal Beis. Let me read you the Gemara. It's a short, succinct Gemara. It says as follows: Amar Ula, Chalakayra Kriya Shema b'lei tefillin. Anybody who reads Kriya Shema without putting on his tefillin, kilomeid de sheker ba'atzmai. It's as if he's giving false testimony about himself. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, and that reason is very simple because you say in Kriya Shema, chartem. Right? We say, chartem on your head and your arm, you're saying it without wearing it. It's as if you brought an oila without the mincha, or zevach b'lei nesachim, you brought a carbon without bringing the nesachim. So the Gemara has some pretty harsh rhetoric to say about someone who reads Krias Shema without tefillin. Now, of course, it's possible to read Krias Shema with tefillin when you wake up, but the normal meaning that the Rechaim is referencing over here is to get out of bed, you wash negavas, and you say Krias Shema. You're not wearing tefillin yet, you're not in shul, you're not all prepared for davening. You just say Krias Shema. The problem is that l'chayr, this Gemara brachas, in a very, very straightforward manner, seems to be highly opposed to saying Krias Shema without tefillin.
On or without being so?
Without tefillin. Okay, 1 second. You're on something. The Gemara, if I would read it just kipshutai, it sounds like you're tefillin not on. Befrat the meid the sheker b'atzmai rationale. What's the meid the sheker b'atzmai, right? It says ukshartem lo'is al yedecha, and you're not wearing it. So hang on.
You read it at night. What do it at night?
Lav's man tefillin. It's not the sheker if it's not man tefillin. It's not the time. Shabbos also you read it. It's lav's man tefillin. That's what we were talking about before. So this is the problem, the Gemara. Now, we're just to establish the problem. You take a look in Shulchan Aruch, in Simon Chafei, in Archaim, Chafei Dalid. Shulchan Aruch says as follows: there is no chelik on this. Tzarich sheyeh tefillin ala b'shas Krias Shema tefillah. Your tefillin must be on you when you're reading Krias Shema and you're davening. If you look at Mishnah Berurah brings Ratzah Leimar l'chol hapachas b'shas Krias Shema tefillah. At least that's the bare minimum that you have to wear tefillin for. Amina b'Gemara kol hakar Krias Shema b'li tefillin arei kilometer the sheker b'asmei chas v'shalom. You're saying you're reading it vein kash, you're not currently wearing it. That's what Taisus seems to learn it. Even though b'diavad, of course, you yotze Krias Shema, the mitzvah of Krias Shema, you yotze b'diavad without tefillin, but it's like a tarti disaster. You're doing a mitzvah on one hand and avera on the other hand. So this is the issue. Which Baruch calls it avera. Yesh avera mitzad acher, and avera from the other hand, because where's the avera? Mayday the sheker is an avera, but I mean it's a play on words. Obviously, it doesn't. But saying it the sheker is an avera, right? Some sort of avera also in this is in the colloquial term, like avera meaning nishgut. You're doing a bad thing, not a good thing. Mitzvah means good thing. Avera means bad thing. You're doing the wrong thing. Now let me read the next few lines in the Rechaim's Kolkaira. It says as follows: I am belevush. Look in the levush. Shemasha amru chazal hakari Krias Shema b'lo tefillin kilometer the sheker lo amru al mitzvah amofcha. They only meant that l'chatchila. If you don't have any onus or reason that prevents you from doing it, you're just doing it because you're not interested in putting on tefillin. But if you have any onus, or he says two things over here. It's whatever. He says two things. If you have some sort of onus, a reason why you can't do it, not a problem. You can read Krias Shema without tefillin. He says many people don't know this. I feel it to me the chachamim. There are people who are machmer and they say, I don't want to read Krias Shema without tefillin. I need to put on my tefillin. Once you miss Krias Shema, it's broken. The whole body's not clean. And so the Rechaim says, Mela, put aside this Gemara in Brachas that says that Krias Shema b'li tefillin is kilometer the sheker b'atzmai, and just make sure that first thing you do in the morning, you read Krias Shema right away, and that's it. Now, he does bring a levush over here, where the levush says that it's only talking about when you don't have an einus. And the levush does say, if you look at the levush is Ramah's Talmud. The levush says, this that we say kilometer the sheker b'atzmai is only if you don't have an einus. Now, I'll leave it up to you, and not all at once. What exactly constitutes an einus, right? A legitimate ovid who's getting up and he's really spending, he's getting up vasikin time. No, I'm saying, but let's say more than that. Even a Rebbe, a chassid, who's getting up, so a guy who's getting up at an early hour and he's putting in hours of time into his achanas and whatever, fine, I can hear that you tell me that's not a guy who's neglecting tefillin, right? Levush says the Levush's nakuda is that when I say the sheker is when it's like neglectful or it's like disrespectful. Now, if a guy's doing it with like a certain sincerity and he's committed and he thinks this elevates his whole davening and whatever, I could hear you can make an argument. Mitzad Sheni, I think it's very, 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 very logical what you're saying. And if it's a daily occurrence, come on, get your act together, figure it out. You need to get up a little earlier. I don't work it out, right? You can't every day tell me, I was honest in my hachanas. Okay, you know what your hachanas take. They take you 2 hours and 22 minutes. So make sure you get up with enough time for Krias Shema, right? So for the Divrei Chaim to stol to that levush is like a shvera thing with the Divrei Chaim saying, like showing to a levush that says as long as it's not only when there's no einus, to call this an einus.
The guys at town, every morning you need to spend 3 hours in the bath, right?
So get up earlier.
Whatever, you're going to have the middle of the night.
So maybe that's an einus, right?
Yeah,
right.
So it is possible that the guy could have a...
Right, okay, so that's the thing. There is a circumstance of Chaim. It's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, the Tzustel is like a very...
Also when your aren't under your control. The guy that decide this is going to be a heter davening, so I have to spend an extra time.
Right, the Rechaim is making a very broad zushtel from something that's a little could be read, maybe probably should be read a little bit more narrowly. It's a little more of a narrow kula. So now, what do we taka do with this Gemara and Brachas? Meaning, you have a problem now, right? The Chassidim are not lemaisa. They're not davening before it's Zman Kriyas. They're not putting on the tefillin until later. What do you do about this conundrum? So there's an interesting thing. There's a tshuva from the Beis Yitzchak. Yitzchak Shmelkish, who was a big famous Galatiana Paisik, Hasidish affiliated. I wouldn't call him Hasidish, maybe Hasidish. This is certainly loosely Hasidish, whatever. In there he brings something from the Chayz of Lublin that Samuel was mechavan to already. He says the Chayz of Lublin says as follows: this that we say that it's not allowed to say Kriya Shema without talis and tefillin, without tefillin, is only if you don't plan on putting on tefillin later in the day. But if you plan on putting on tefillin later in the day, so then I'm not a meid of the sheker. Of course, I believe that a yid has to wear tefillin. I rather didn't get around to it yet. Okay, I'm going to put it on later. That's not meid of the sheker. Meid of the sheker ba'atzmai is when you don't plan on putting it on later. Now, the raya that he brings is something interesting. He says as follows. But look, he has a good raya though. It is chassidish there, but he has a good raya. He says the Gemara uses two mashalim. The Gemara says kila meid of the sheker ba'atzmai. Then the Gemara also says kila maybe mincha b'lei nesachim or zevach b'lei mincha. And carbon b'lei nesachim. So if you look in the Gemara Menachos Naflam Ches, the Gemara says maybe adam nesachim ad asar yamim. You're allowed to bring you nesachim until 10 days later. So he says, you see, minei ubei. The Gemara was saying it. The Gemara says chooses this mashal in particular. Oh, 1 second. You're beating all the curve here. Yeah, 1 second. So he says, look at the Gemara. The Gemara particularly chooses a mashal of something where you could bring it later. It says elamai. The Gemara meant to say, as long as you're going to do it later, it's good to go. Now, Sammy's asking a Pasha question. That's presuming that these two things are like two sides of one coin. Both Mandam are saying the same thing, and they're just using different verbiage to express it, right? Like he's kilu. The second Mandamar is being mazber the first Mandamar. The first Mandamar, Ula says, Kalakari Krishma like Tefillin, kilu made the Shekab Asmer. Chia Barabba says, kilu hikriv, and he's explaining Ula. He's like giving another way to explain it. But if you learn that these are two different rationales, they're two different sheetas, so to speak. So Ula's sheet of Kalakari Krishma like Tefillin, kilu made the Shekab Asmer. He still made it the Shekab Asmer. It says Ukshartim, he's supposed to be wearing it. You're not wearing it. Like Tosfos says, like the Rishonim learning the Gemara. In the Gemara.
Maybe in the Gemara, that's not what if you're gonna.
Yeah. So now what's interesting is also that the Gemara brings a story of Rav, where Rav read out of order. Rav read Kriya Shema, then put on tefillin, and the Gemara concludes that the shliach brought Rav's tefillin late. Rav's tefillin came late. I'll read you the Gemara a little. The Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says like this: Rav Mashi Yadeh, the Kara Kriya Shema. Pay attention to order. Rav washed his hands. Kara Kriya Shema, va'anach tefillin. Then he put on tefillin, v'tzali, and he davened. So the Gemara asks, "V'hechi avad hachi." How is that to do this? And the Gemara ends up saying, at the end of a long back and forth, the Gemara says, "Mikama kan kashil Rav, shluchahu de'ivis." His shliach, his messenger, his gabe was not the sharpest tool in the shed. He brought his tefillin late. So meaning Rav really wanted to put on tefillin and say Kriya Shema, but the order got jumbled over here. Now, so here's what do you do with this Gemara? So the shayil to the Beis Yitzchak, who's a ardent chassid, says as follows. He says it's pashut that Rav, who was one of the Gedolei Amirim, was davening Masikin time, right? Rav was no lazy bum. He was davening Masikin. So you see that Rav was waiting for his tefillin to come so he could daven Masikin and say Kriya Shema. His tefillin didn't come on time. He prioritized saying Kriya Shema Masikin time, even though he didn't have tefillin. He wasn't running out of time. He prioritized saying Kriya Shema right away. So you see that Rav held it wasn't such a big deal to say Kriya Shema without tefillin. It's only l'chatchila, like the Rechaim says. It's a chumra ba'alma. But push comes to shove. You want to do Vasikin, go for it. Do it Kriya Shema. This is what the Shayil in the Beis Yitzchak says. Which Beis Yitzchak's matchin. He says, no way. He says, who told you Rav was davening Vasikin? Maybe Rav was up to his man Kriya Shema. It was a summer day. His man Kriya Shema was really early. Rav his man Kriya Shema was coming. He was running out of time, and it was time. And you make a taste to build this whole Torah out of this Gemara and say Rav was davening Vasikin. You have a raya that it's only l'chatchila and you can do what you want. Rav was not Vasikin. It was man Kriya Shema time. And Rav was davening like a regular person. Now, he goes on to show this. He has a Yerushalmi that argues on the Bavli, and the Yerushalmi uses Rav as a raya and doesn't give this answer of Shluchu De'ivis. So he says, you see, the Bavli understood Rav as having to fit into the framework. The Bavli understood that Rav needs to fit into the framework of Kriya Shema and Tefillin. Elamai says Rav was just running out of time and it's not a raya to anything. But he does bring the Chayzis Teretz, and he says, but Shemati B'Shem the Chayzah, that as long as you're going to put on Tefillin later in the day, that already resolves it. Now the Shayla Meshiv right away, they're contemporaries, they're not talking to each other, but they both know the same information. The Shayla Meshiv right away sells on the point and says, what do you mean? That only works for Chia, it doesn't work for Ula. Ula said, "May the Shekar Batzman like do so." That's an insufficient teretz. He says, "You're bringing me a chayzah. It's an insufficient teretz. It's not enough." To which the Kotzka brought down B'Shem the Kotzka retorts, "No, the two terutzim are stacked on each other. They're explaining each other. And then, meaning this whole dispute plays out in the Machlokas Shalameshim and the Kotzke in how to learn, so to speak, the Chayzis Teretz. Now, what's interesting?
You're still playing with fire.
Yeah.
On
the tzad that it's not, that
right.
Exactly, you're still playing with fire, 100%. So now, what's interesting is that, what do you say? Exactly, what's interesting is that there were many, many rabbis who, because of what you're saying, because you're playing with fire, were makbid to get up early and put on tefillin and say Krias Shema and then do their hachanas. Now, yeah, go to the mikveh after, do the learning after, say Tehillim after, all the hachanas later. A rebbe of no less stature than the Baal Shem Tov himself. The Yeshuas Yisrael brings down that the minhag of the Baal Shem Tov was miyad shenasa yoyim hayim miniach tefillin v'kayir Krias Shema kivin she'espal b'mocher leiratz lachas man Krias Shema. And the Baal Shem Tov didn't want to, he knew he was going to daven late, he didn't want to miss man Krias Shema. He didn't want to violate the Gemara, so it seems the Baal Shem Tov did not like the Kotzke's teretz. This distinction that the Kotzke was making, that the Tzanzer was making, that as long as you put on tefillin later on, you're good to go. The Baal Shem Tov himself was makbid to put on tefillin. And what do you say? Kol masha Talmud vasik as l'chadish b'chasidus. It was needing the Baal Shem Tov and yeah. Now that come on. I don't know, but that doesn't work. That doesn't work. He didn't like that. It's hard, yeah. So now many other Rebbe's tackle like the trying to look for famous ones only. The Chovas were makbid. The Lev Sameach, the Aleska brings down that his shver, the Sar Shalom was makbid. Just put on tefillin in the morning and say Krias Shema. So now this is like makes a whole new wrinkle in the schedule. Meaning if your hachanas are involved in gufnaki, like Satmar, so that you can put on tefillin, so then you're stuck. Maybe that's sakanainus. But if your hachanas are like spiritual hachanas, you want to go to the mikveh, say some tehillim, learn a little, prepare yourself, some sort of workup, some appetite, some eslavas for davening. So the proper minhag, according to many of the Greaser Rebbes, and more than likely the Chaim himself was makbid on this, because later on many of his Eineklich, like the Kleisenberger and others, were makbid on this, was to put on tefillin early in the morning, say Krias Shema with his man and everything, and only later on daven with the tzibur, the proper way. Now the Chaim actually had another interesting wrinkle in his minhag. The Chaim learned that Makam Yesh B'Rosh L'Niach Shtei Tefillin. The Gemara Menachos says there's room in the head to put the tefillin means simultaneously. You could fit two pairs of tefillin at the same time. And there's a famous picture of the Kleisenberg Rebbe on a plane to Eretz Yisrael, wearing his Rashi and Rebbeinu Tam, like special two small tefillin on his head at the same time. Side by side. Now the Sfardim, Rebbe Hillel is a whole country. They're supposed to be back to back, and front to back, it's side by side. Yeah. Well, it's a need, and what does it mean, Makam Yesh B'Rosh? Is it in the width or the depth?
I know,
but, yeah. So Rebbe Hillel is a whole country about this. It's called Lahachzir Taral Yoshna or Lahachzir Taral Yoshna. But no, certain Tzanzer Rebbes did this. So the Tzanzer Rebbe had some like another wrinkle in his minhag of putting on tefillin with Krias Shema. Now, there is one more very fascinating shita in how to understand this Gemara that I just want to share, and we'll wrap it up with this. The Chassam Sofer, not in his own svarim, but in the Sefer Likutei Chaver ben Chaim from the Chassam Sofer's Talmud, he brings something interesting. He says the Chassam Sofer was makbid to put on tefillin Rebbeinu Tam every day, but the Chassam Sofer did not say Krias Shema while he wore his tefillin Rebbeinu Tam. Now in Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchos Tefillin, when the Mechaber brings down the Bal Nefesh Yachvar to wear tefillin Rebbeinu Tam, he says put on tefillin Rebbeinu Tam after davening and say Krias Shema. From Sefer was makbid not to say Krias Shema. Why? Because he said Kol HaKayir Krias Shema b'lei tefillin kilu meidei d'shaka b'atzmai. And Hayos we be'ikar, then we hold that Rashi's tefillin is the real tefillin, and Rebbeinu Tam tefillin is only an extra pair. It's not the real tefillin. The Chassam Sofer was chayshish that if he says Krias Shema, he's kilu meidei d'shaka b'atzmai.
Yeah, but then chayshish in the morning also.
Rashi we hold like the Rashi's the ikar. The Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch passage Rashi's ikar. So we have to choose a side. So that's the ikar. You have to say Krias Shema. But Rebbeinu Tam told him to say Krias Shema again. It's kilu meidei d'shaka b'atzmai.
Now, if you hold obviously that you can't say later in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So inherently in this, 1 second. So the Minchas Lazar makes this point, but you're right, exactly, absolutely. Inherently in this Chassam Sofer, you see clearly that he didn't buy into the Chayz's teretz, because this should be a kavachimer. If the Chayz is telling you it's not made at the Shaka Basma because you're going to put it on later, certainly if you put it on already, you showed. Look, I'm pro. I'm all in. I'm pro Krias Shema tefillin, etc. Now I'm just doing like redundancies. You see clearly the Chassam Sofer was not taken by the.
Also what time he was putting it on.
That doesn't matter.
You already said it. Now to which the some various I forgot who says this exactly, who the one who says it, but he says that the Chayz doesn't.
Maybe he thought it was already too late in the day.
To say Krias Shema, it's not for mitzvah Krias Shema. It's nothing. It's some. He was up early. He was up early. Sefer wasn't chassidish. He was up early. He was doing right after davening. You know what I'm saying? But someone says, I forgot who I saw this from. He says, how can you tell me made it check of Atzmai if I'm going to put it on later or I put it on already? He says, let's say a guy comes to court He makes up a total bilbil. He says a false narrative, a whole false story. Later on, 2 hours later, he comes back to court on a totally different matter, and he says, true aid this. You can tell me it's not made the sheker? Like, how does one fix the other? Meaning, if the point is every time you say Krias Shema, and that's the Chari Tzanzer Sefer held. Now, the problem is, Tzanzer asks that, it would seem the Tzanzer Sefer held that any time you say the words of Krias Shema, you need to be wearing tefillin. Now, Shabbos, when you lay in the parsha, you say tefillin. Okay, Shabbos lavs on tefillin. It's not made the sheker basket. But let's say you're being Mava Sedra during the weeks where parshas the tefillin are in there. According to the Tzanzer Sefer, it would come out you have to put in your tefillin. Because the Tzanzer Sefer seems to be holding that any time you say these parshas the tefillin, it doesn't matter if you said it earlier, you said it later. Because it's in the parsha. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what it's doing.
This is the Tzanzer Sefer. According now, the Minchas Elazar, the Minchas Elazar in Darkei in Ois Chaim V'Shalom in Orach Chaim Simchav Hey, he scoffs at this. He says this is an impossibility that the Tzanzer Sefer held. You have to wear tefillin every time you say Krias Shema. That can't be. Says that's outlandish. That can't be the pshat. Lamaisa, look at the Chavar Chaim, the same sefer that brings this later on in his monograph about the Tzanzer Sefer. He writes that when the Tzanzer Sefer was Ma'avei Sedra on the parshas that have tefillin, that the Tzanzer Sefer would put on his tefillin. So the Tzanzer Sefer seemed to have had like the most extreme position in this Gemara as Kila made it the sheker ba'atzmai. Is every time you say the parsha of Krias Shema, provided it's not during Shabbos or Yom Tov or whatever it is, you have to read. You have to say.
It's not just Krias Shema, it's also Kaddish.
How literal do you take the word?
Any one of the parshias that are in the Krias Shema, exactly what it says. Now the Minchas Elazar does not like this, and many of the Tzanzer Sefer's einiklach, like the Erloy, the ones that became Hasidish in particular, dispute this and say the Tzanzer Sefer did not hold like this. But the Ma'aseh, the Likutei Chaim Chaim was a Talmud who knew the Tzanzer Sefer was writing first-hand occurrences. He's not writing things that he heard from other people. Shows the Tzanzer Sefer was super makbid. So it's just the range of the sheets over here, I guess, from the Chaim's necessary innovation to try to save a whole generation of Chassidim from missing Zman Krias Shema, to the Tzanzer Sefer's most extreme position on how to do this, and to everywhere in the middle. But Al-Kapanim, I think, one second, Al-Kapanim, I think to me the ending is, what Avrami was saying is that you're playing with fire. Meaning, there's so many Achronim and Rishonim that seem to learn this Gemara in extremely stringent manner that if you don't say Krias Shema tefillin, you're mamish made it the sheker ba'atzmai, which I don't know exactly what avera that is, but it ain't a good thing to be made it the sheker ba'atzmai, right? So hayos is such a stringent reading of it. You're playing with fire. And if someone knows that he's going to miss on Krias Shema, during the week sometime, he should, if he can.
You went that route. I was wanting to know what's the route the other way.
What do you mean the route the other way to be making
The
answer?
other day, either two things. Either there's people.
Here,
You have people.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.